us. At the end of this video, the viewers will be able to understand basic shoulder anatomy and impingement syndrome. The other topics will be covered in the subsequent videos. The shoulder anatomy. Shoulder has the greatest range of motion amongst all the other joints in the body. Shoulder joint is a complex joint and it comprises of many bones: humerus, scapula, clavicle and sternum. The scapula itself comprises of glenoid, acromion, coracoid and scapular body. The shoulder joint comprises of many different joints. The most important joint amongst them is glenohumeral joint, followed by acromioclavicular joint, that is the joint between the acromion process and the clavicle; sternoclavicular joint, that is the joint between the sternum and the clavicle; and scapulothoracic joint, which is a pseudo joint which comprises of the articulation between the thorax and the scapula. The rotator cuff muscles. These are the very important group of muscles as it is the dynamic stabilizer of the shoulder joint. The main function of rotator cuff muscle is depression of the humeral head during overhead activities. The rotator cuff muscles comprises of supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and subscapularis. The supraspinatus muscle has a significant stabilizing, compressive and slight upward translation effect. These effects combined with gravity leads to abduction of the arm. The other small muscles of the rotator cuff, that is infraspinatus, which is an external rotator, teres minor, which is an external rotator again, and subscapularis, which is an internal rotator, causes a stabilizing compression and downward translation of the humerus in the glenoid fossa. This force couple is necessary for abduction. The force couple of the short rotator cuff muscles along with the deltoid, which is the largest and strongest muscle of the shoulder joint, is very important for abduction movement. Any interruption of function leading to fatigue or poor coordination of any of these muscles can lead to microtrauma and eventually dysfunction in the shoulder region. Anteriorly, the muscles which can be seen in the shoulder is again deltoid, then the very important muscle pectoralis major and the long head of biceps. In this slide, you can see the shoulder anterior view. Here you need to visualize where is the acromion, where is the clavicle, where is the greater tubercle of the humerus, so that you can understand the basic anatomy of the shoulder joint to understand impingement syndrome in detail. Here you can see in blue color the jelly-like substance which is subacromial bursa, and the coracoacromial ligament, the coracohumeral ligament, now something about the static stabilizer of the shoulder joint. One of the main static stabilizer of the shoulder joint is the labrum, which is a cartilage ring around the glenoid which deepens the socket of the glenohumeral joint. And the dynamic stabilizers can also be seen here, which are like a cuff. The tendon of supraspinatus on the superior aspect, the tendon of infraspinatus on the lateral aspect, the tendon of teres minor on the inferior aspect, and the tendon of subscapularis on the medial aspect of the glenoid cavity. Now, something about the subacromial bursa, which we have already seen in the last slide. It is between the acromion and the rotator cuff tendon. The main function of the subacromial bursa is to protect the acromion and the rotator cuff from grinding against each other. So, let's go on to the main topic of today's discussion, that is impingement syndrome. The term impingement syndrome was popularized by Neer in 1972. It is a clinical entity in which the supraspinatus and the bursa are pathologically compressed as they pass between the head of the humerus and the lateral aspect of the acromion. The impingement can be of three types depending upon its characteristics. It is primary impingement, secondary impingement, and internal impingement. Primary impingement is the compression of the rotator cuff tendons between the humeral head and overlying anterior third of the acromion, coracoacromial ligament, and coracoid or acromioclavicular joint. It is a result of an abnormal mechanical relationship between the rotator cuff and the coracoacromial arch. These patients are usually older, that is older than 40 years, and they complain of pain in the anterior shoulder and pain on the upper lateral aspect of the arm. Patient may also complain of shoulder weakness and difficulty in performing overhead activities, and loss of motion or weakness of rotator cuff, which is secondary to pain. Secondary impingement, it is the attenuation of the static stabilizers of the glenohumeral joint, such as capsular ligaments and labrum, from the excessive demands incurred in throwing or overhead activities, which can lead to anterior instability. Secondary impingement is a clinical phenomena which results in relative narrowing of the subacromial space. This often results from glenohumeral or scapulothoracic joint instability. So basically, this is a mechanical impingement due to the loss of stabilizing function of the rotator cuff muscle, which leads to abnormal superior translation of the humeral head. And due to this abnormal superior translation, there is reduced depression of the humeral head during throwing, and that is why there is less clearance, leading to a mechanical impingement of the rotator cuff on the coracoacromial arch. These patients are usually younger and involved in overhead athletic activities or overhead overuse activities. Internal impingement, it occurs when the shoulder is in 90-90 position and the undersurface of the supra and infraspinatus tendon become compressed or pinched between the humeral head and the posterior superior glenoid rim. The factors which lead to impingement may be mobility deficits, which involve capsular stiffness, mainly posterior capsule stiffness, glenohumeral internal rotation deficiency, and stability deficits, which may involve scapular dyskinesia, capsular laxity, and acquired anterior instability. Neuromuscular control or strength deficit in the scapular muscles, rotator cuff muscles, and poor recruitment patterns. The patients under risk are those who over 40 years, persons involved in overhead activities, patients who had a history of bursitis or supraspinatus tendinitis, a typical shape of acromion, that is type 2 and type 3 acromion, and AC joint arthritis or AC joint osteophytes. This typical shape of acromion can be seen in the image. The type 2 and type 3 acromion are vulnerable for impingement syndrome because you can see the acromion is curved or hooked, which renders the subacromial space reduced, and this reduced subacromial space can impinge the structures beneath the space. The symptoms of impingement may be pain in the acromial area when the arm is flexed and internally rotated. Initially, to use the overhead position, the pain may result from subacromial bursitis or rotator cuff tendinitis. Pain when sleeping on the affected side. The patient pain often worsen at night as the subacromial bursa becomes hyperemic after a day of activity. Decreased range of motion, especially abduction, and weakness of the rotator cuff muscles or the shoulder muscles. According to Neer, there are different progressive stages of the syndrome. Stage 1 comprises of edema and hemorrhage. Typically, the patient is younger than 25 years and this is a reversible lesion. There is tenderness to palpation over the greater tuberosity of the humerus and tenderness along ridge or acromion. Painful arc is present between 60 to 120 degrees and pain is increased with resistance at 90 degree. Shoulder range of motion may be restricted with significant subacromial inflammation. Stage 2. It is the stage of fibrosis and tendinitis. The patients are usually aging between 25 to 40 years. This is not reversible by just activity modification. There is greater degree of soft tissue crepitus which can be felt because of scarring in the subacromial space. The patient complains of catching sensation while lowering arm approximately at 100 degrees, and there is limitation of active as well as passive range of motion in this stage. The third stage, which is non-reversible stage, it is the stage of bone spurs and tendon ruptures, rotator cuff tears and biceps rupture. Patients are usually over the age of 40 years. The differential diagnosis comprises of rotator cuff tears, calcific tendinitis, biceps tendinitis, cervical radiculopathy, acromioclavicular joint arthritis, glenohumeral joint instability and glenohumeral osteoarthritis. On physical examination, there is atrophy of rotator cuff muscles, decreased range of motion, especially internal rotation and adduction, weakness in flexion and external rotation, pain on resisted abduction and external rotation, and pain on impingement tests. Now, friends, what are impingement tests? These are special tests done to confirm whether there is impingement present. In these tests, we actually compromise the subacromial space even more by giving vulnerable positions to the patient. There are mainly two tests to test impingement. One is Neer impingement test. In this, there is passive elevation of the internally rotated arm in the sagittal plane. That is shoulder passive forward flexion. And with this position, the patient's symptoms get worsened and the patient complains of the similar pain which the patient usually feels on the anterior aspect of the shoulder, and this suggests that the test is positive for impingement. Another is Hawkins impingement test. With the elbow flexed to 90 degree, the shoulder is passively flexed to 90 degrees and internally rotated. Again, the same symptoms reappear and the patient's pain worsen or either occurs again, and the test is considered positive for impingement. The radiological findings in this, the plain X-rays are usually done to see whether there are acromial spurs or any AC joint osteophytes, subacromial sclerosis or greater tuberosity cyst. But to confirm the diagnosis and rule out rotator cuff tear, MRI is very much essential. The management mainly consists of conservative management. We always need to start with conservative management. If the conservative management fails, then surgery can be indicated. Conservative management includes activity modification, that is, avoid painful and overhead activities. Very important is the physiotherapy management, which mainly consists of stretching and range of motion exercises and strengthening exercises of the shoulder. The patient may be given NSAIDs, steroid injection into the subacromial space. The operative treatment is given for patients in which conservative management fails and there is no improvement even after 6 months of conservative treatment. The goal of surgery is to remove the impingement and create more subacromial space for the rotator cuff. The anterolateral edge of the acromion is removed either by an open surgery, which is known as acromioplasty, or an arthroscopic technique called as subacromial decompression. The success rate of the operative treatment is around 70 to 90%. So we'll stop here today, and in my upcoming videos you will understand the basic pathomechanics behind impingement syndrome and the physiotherapy management for conservative treatment of subacromial bursitis and impingement syndrome. Thank you, friends.